Have you ever heard of an around the world ticket? Did you know that you can book one in business class, often for less points and miles than a one-way? Well, prepare to have your mind blown because I promise you this episode will not disappoint. Join us as we deep dive with the Point Sisters, Kelsi and Devan, who've mastered the complex world of around the world tickets. You'll hear firsthand exactly how to book an around the world ticket, as well as stories from Devan's around the world honeymoon that she took herself. Whether you're planning a honeymoon, a bucket list adventure, or just aiming to stretch your travel budget to its fullest, this is the episode you cannot afford to miss. Welcome everybody to the Revolutionizing Your Journey podcast. I am your host, DeAndre Coke. Before we introduce our guests, don't forget to join our new Facebook community. There we're going to directly help you answer your points and miles questions, and that link is in the show notes. But today, I've got a huge dynamic duo for you, and that is Kelsi and Devan, and they are the Point Sisters, and that's actually their Instagram handle as well, at Point Sisters. And they were actually recommended to us by our friends at the Wonderland on Points podcast. That was back in episode 20, so go check that out because that was a great one. And Devan, Kelsi, I'm super excited because you guys are gurus in the round the world booking tickets, and this is going to be an incredible show. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here.
Yes, we're so excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I want to start from the beginning and learn how you guys got into the points and miles game. And then also, Devan, I know we're feeling a little bit under the weather today, but I'm going to have to hear about your round the world honeymoon. So we're going to do that because it's an incredible story, and I've seen the content on it that you've put together, and it's amazing. And want to talk favorite redemption stories and everything. And so for the listeners out there, when I say these ladies are on another level, they're playing another level. Like, I feel pretty confident in my ability to come across and come up with great travel points and miles strategies, but they have done what very few can do, and that is mastering the around the world ticket. So if you have an Amex card or a fan of Amex points in general, this is one that you're not going to want to miss, because it's going to completely reshape your thought process on points and miles. And we're absolutely going to get into that, Devan and Kelsi. I'm going to start just by asking to tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you right now in the world? And how did you get into the points and miles game?
So I'm Kelsi. This is Devan. We're sisters, as you said, the Point Sisters. And we actually both live in San Diego. I think the story that Devan typically tells is that we've kind of always been in points and miles. Our parents were into points and miles, kind of like at a low level. My dad traveled a lot for work. My mother's father, so my grandfather, was a pilot for American Airlines. So we kind of just always played the points and miles game. And I think it was like in the last 5 or 6 years, we've really leveled up. I think we took kind of base knowledge from our parents, and then we kind of expanded. And then the last 5 or 6 years, we like really leveled up. And that's kind of the story we tell. But I think also too, Devan and I are really, and not a lot of people know this because we don't share this so often, but Devan and I are both really into the FIRE movement. So financial independence, retire early. And I think that if you are just in that space, this is just a very, very tangible, adjacent kind of hobby, right? So like if you're already looking at ways to save as much money as possible, invest as much money as possible, but also live like your best life, you're always kind of looking for these like couponing strategies. And points and miles is definitely one of those, right? Like we travel in luxury for a fraction of what people pay to travel in economy. And I think, they're just both really closely aligned. So I think that kind of pushed us there too. Like we had always kind of done it, and then we were into FIRE, and then we're like, we got to level up. And that's kind of how we got here.
And I will say, I think we have always used points and miles to fly economy. And as Kel said, like 5-6 years ago, we're like, no, we need business class. So how are we going to make this work and feel comfortable about our point spending and stuff like that? So that's probably another reason why we're super into this.
Honestly, as the financial advisor of me, we could take an entire hour to go down the whole conversation of FIRE in so many different ways. I will spare the listeners that because I don't think they came here to hear about financial independence and retirement. Although if you needed someone, talk to me, I got you. But secondly, that's super cool, right? Because you are exactly right. That living a different lifestyle, I mean, this is kind of in a way like extreme couponing in ways. I mean, you can there's levels to it, right? But the good news is you don't have to have a bunker full of tomato sauce anywhere when you're doing the points and miles game.
We don't have a garage full of toilet paper. So yeah.
Perfect. But that is really cool that you linked it to that, because actually I haven't heard that before. And that's a really interesting connection to that area. And so super cool there. So you started from a young age. Actually, interestingly enough, we had one other guest a few weeks ago who they have been the only other person that I've met that kind of grew up in the points and miles space where their parents had an Amex back in like the 80s or whatever it may be. So you guys started super early, so you were exposed. So I got to ask, with your grandfather being a pilot for American Airlines and you being around kind of the points and miles lifestyle growing up, to what level did you say your family capitalized on it for you? Did you really get to experience a lot of the world at young ages?
Well, yes. So I would say that my parents got into it because we grew up abroad. So we grew up in Puerto Rico and in Mexico. And then after that, we all kind of went our separate ways and lived in different countries on our own. But because we grew up abroad and our parents are American, we had to travel a lot to really have like relationships with our family members, right? So we had to travel to Boston. My dad was from Massachusetts, so we traveled to Boston annually. We had friends and family in Puerto Rico. My mom's family was in Nevada. So just kind of growing up that way, my parents were like, wait a minute, how are we going to afford this? And so they capitalized on points and miles in that way. And kind of as they got older and further in their careers, we started using it in different ways. Like we took family trips all around Mexico. We took family trips to Peru, the Caribbean, South America, Central America. So I think my parents, it wasn't only points and miles. Definitely a lot of cash as well, but yeah, we definitely grew up seeing a lot of the world.
Awesome. So with that being said, before we get into the meat, which is going to be talking about ANA and around the world tickets and all of that, I'd love to ask, because I find that a lot of us in this space, right, we all come from different backgrounds. I mean, there's some people that are content creators and they travel professionally, but the majority of us in the points and miles space have our own day-to-day life. So I'd love to ask you, ladies, what is it that you do professionally, right? So what is it that you do in between all the travels and the luxury life of traveling you get to live?
Oh my God, I love this question because I think it's so important that people know that we are just normal. Like I am a normal person with a normal job, normal PTO. And I think that is so, so important that people know that I'm not like some, crazy billionaire being like, yeah, I use points and miles, but like actually I don't even work or anything.
Like actually you're just independently wealthy. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so such a good question. Thank you for asking. I work in beverage manufacturing. So I work for a small good for you beverage company. Actually, we're quite large. And that's what I do my 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, which I really love. I manage a small team there. And then Dev, why don't you unmute yourself and you won't die.
I will unmute myself. Yeah. So I work in higher education and I also manage a medium-sized team of people in recruitment. So basically we recruit people to our university and that's my full-time job. And then on top of that, Kelsi and I have like 17 side hustles. So Point Sisters is just one of many.
Yeah, it's true.
Nice. So I want to make sure I'm gonna drop this nugget at the end, because after we get through and just talk through all the things, I want to come back and ask you, ladies, how have you managed to travel to the extent that you have with the PTO that you do have? Because I think that would be helpful for listeners to hear how others are taking advantage, and people we've talked to on the podcast before that gave a lot of helpful tips and strategies. So I want to circle back to that at the end, but let's get into the exciting thing, right? Around the world tickets. And so that's literally what it sounds like, right? I mean, let's start from the basics. Please educate me and the listeners. What is an around the world ticket, and who offers it, and how do we go about doing this?
Sure.
I can go if you want, Kels.
Yeah, sure.
So the around the world ticket is exactly what it sounds like. You are going around the world. Now people get this confused with crisscrossing the world, and that's not what it is. You literally are going around the world in the same, motion. So either east to west or west to east. You get to decide which way around the world you want to go. And what's really cool about these tickets, the main one is going to be ANA around the world. So the only way to do that one is with American Express points, or if for some reason you have a plethora of ANA points. But I don't know too many people in that secondary category. And with the ANA around the world, you get to have up to 12 stopovers in different countries. So you can go basically up to 12 different places for a certain amount of points. So for example, the sweet spot is business class, because that's what most people want to fly. And you can go around the world for as few as 105,000 points in business class. Now, granted, that doesn't mean you're going to have 12 stops, because it is mileage based. So the way it works is the actual mileage that you are flying around the world is how much it's going to cost. And there's like a chart that tells you, okay, if you fly 22,000 miles, that's going to cost 125,000 points. If you fly 18,000 miles, that's 105,000 points. So there's a really clear chart on ANA that gives it to you. There are other types of ANA, like Singapore has one, Air Canada has like a fake one. Qantas, I believe, has one, but don't quote me on that. So there are other forms of it, but ANA is by far the most superior one.
And the one that we're familiar with.
And the one, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you've got to be kidding me here, right? Because I've spent weeks earlier this year looking, because we're doing Bali for 3 weeks. We're going back to the Maldives later this year, and each of those literally each of those one ways have been at least 100,000 points, and that was going from San Francisco to Bali, right? You've got to be kidding me that you're telling me you can go around the world for 100,000 points in business class for one person, right? Like there's no way. There's no way.
Yeah, that's why it really is a sweet spot, right? Like you're not going to get a better redemption in the points and miles world. Because if you break it down, so let's say you take the minimum 3 stopovers at 100, that means each business class segment is 30,000 points, or, whatever, 31.5. And the way that Al Nippon Airways, so ANA, is able to do that is that it functions within the Star Alliance. So you're not taking only ANA operated flights, you are taking flights in their alliance. And so their partners will open up award availability, and that's how you're really able to access this. So kind of, flights that maybe routes that aren't flown very much, or it wasn't sold on other platforms. If they open up that segment to ANA, then it's a free for all grab. You can take it and book it on this segment. And that's why it's not really bookable, I think, on the ANA website, because they're pulling from so many different alliances and partners that you just have to call in and see if they've actually opened it up to ANA. And so that's how it works.
So, I know from calling in American Airlines, I've got Platinum Pro status with them when I had the Platinum desk, that it still can take a minute to get through to customer service. So what's it like calling into ANA?
Oh, the worst.
we were at brunch the other day, and Devin was on hold with ANA for 3 hours and 7 minutes. Like, we had an entire brunch with our girlfriends. We're sipping mimosas and Devin just has the phone there because it can take that long, which I mean, is really why people, I think, pay for the service. Like, not only are they paying for like our expertise, because when you call, you better have flights to book, right? Because like if somebody gets there and doesn't have the flights, you have to hang up and start over. But while it can take 3 hours, I've also gotten through in 40 minutes. Devin just recently, we booked 2 of these yesterday and Devin got through in 36 minutes. So really you just kind of run the gambit. At this point, we've called in enough times that we kind of know when we like to call, but you just never know.
I mean, I'm curious, have you ladies called A&A corporate office and just asked for your own dedicated line? I mean, I feel like there's some business
so
negotiation
So,
that could happen here. I'm sorry, this is the business minded like advisor in me thinking like there's got to be a more efficient way to do this. Like I think you should have a dedicated line at this point. So we're going to talk about your booking service at the end. But I feel like as much as you ladies do this and you're on hold, like they should know who you are and you should have them on, they should have you on speed dial at this point.
They really should. The amount of business we spend.
exactly. I actually on my phone call yesterday, and I got through quick. Like I was in shock. It was only I think Kel said 36 minutes or 40 minutes, whatever it was, which was shocking because I was prepared for 3 hours. But the A&A rep actually complimented me yesterday, and it was like the best compliment I've ever gotten in my life because she's like, "Wow, you really know what you're doing." I'm like, "Thank you so much for like recognizing that and saying it over the phone." And I told her, I was like, "Well, maybe you should get me a job because I book so many of these, so I have direct access." So I'm working on it.
Nice. So we have to find the inside person, right? Like you need that person you can just text or hit them up on WhatsApp and just say, "Hey, I need 5 minutes of your time real quick." Yeah, well, I'll work with you ladies. We're gonna figure out a system.
Give us your extension.
Exactly.
Let's go.
There's got to be a way. So let me ask you this, right? So this clearly takes a very specific skill set. How did you ladies come to figure this out? Because I mean, this is one of the top tier and top levels of advanced, points and miles usage and strategies. How did you get into this?
So I think I have a relatively addictive personality, which can be a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
And when I found out about it, my mind was blown and I knew I had to figure it out. And at that time, granted, not that I was really looking for someone to book it for me, I wanted to learn it myself. There was really no service who was willing to do that. So I was like, well, why don't I become that service? And we got lucky. Our first clients were actually friends of ours, and we had told them, like, please be very patient with us. We are learning. This is very much like we gave them a good deal. So we had 2 really, really great friends who were kind enough to let us, play around with their American Express points.
And we learned a lot from the first few failures.
Yeah, lots of failures. And then basically I became friends with A&A people on the phone and they let me ask a lot of questions. And so it finally all just clicked. And now, we can do them relatively quickly. Obviously, very different from when we first began, and it would take 15, 20 hours. We would call A&A and then they would tell us, no, that flight doesn't exist. And I'm like, why? It was very much, we took a lot of time, a lot of trial and error, lots of error, to where now, I think we've successfully booked anywhere between 30 and 35 around the world in the past year and a half.
Wow, that's utterly incredible. So okay, I want to go on an around the world trip, right? I'm ready to do this. What's the minimum amount of time that you'd recommend that I take to do this trip? And then what's the longest that I could do? I mean, could I spend an entire couple of years backpacking throughout the world? Like, what's the time frame that's allowed here?
Yeah, so minimum is 10 days. And I think we'll circle back to that because I think one of your questions in your notes is, common mistakes, and I think this is the common mistake. People taking too much time or too little time or trying to do too much in whichever bucket they've chosen, right? Um so yeah, minimum 10 days, maximum no, you can't spend 2 years. You can spend one. But you have to remember when booking the flight has to be available, right? So if
And most places don't have availability out more than a year
precisely,
typically.
right, precisely. And that's not to say that you can't make a change. You can make changes, but it's a little bit complicated. Changes are actually very complicated. So
And changes require calling into A&A, meaning waiting on hold and doing it all
yeah.
over again. So
Yeah.
not recommended by any means.
Yeah, but bare minimum, if you just wanted to like try this out, be like, can I do this? You can do 10 days. That's the minimum they allow. And I think maybe we'll get into this a little bit later, but that's not a terrible idea. So yeah, you could do minimum 10, maximum a year.
Got it. So I know in my very limited knowledge of the ANA round the world ticket that it's broken up into regions. Can you elaborate for me and for the listeners? What does that really mean, right? How do regions work when figuring out how to do an around the world ticket?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to think of this is dividing the world up into thirds. So the Americas, Europe, Africa, Asia, Oceania. Those are the three regions that you have to think about. Now, something that's very confusing with ANA is that they will say they have like 12 regions, but don't think of that. Don't look at the ANA website that way. Literally just think of it as three regions: the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia, Oceania. And you do have to hit each region once, minimum once. You can go to multiple countries in one region, that's totally fine, but each region has to be hit once. So technically, on around the world, because you're always starting in one region. Now, I'm going to make the assumption most of the people listening to this podcast are in the US. So we're going to call the US region 1. And they can either go to region 2 first or they can go to region 3 first. It does not matter. You choose which way around the world you want to go. It just has to be continuous around the world. And so let's say you go to Europe, you could literally go from JFK to Zurich, Switzerland. Then you could go Zurich, Switzerland to Narita, Japan.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
whatever. And now you've been to region 1. You've also been to region 3 because you just landed in Narita. You are now eligible to go back home. So you can go from Narita to LAX. Those are like the bookings that we would recommend if you're only doing 10, 12 days is don't overdo it, because that is the biggest mistake people make is overdoing it. But that's how the regions work.
Got it. So if I were to, let's say I started at JFK and I went east, right? So I went to Europe and then I hit Asia. Once I come back to region 1, am I done? And when I ask that question, I mean more so like, can I get back to JFK, or is it like if I hit LAX, that's it? Like I can't get another business class from LAX to JFK, which might be a little bit easier for me to position back to my home in Virginia.
So you can, once you're in LAX, you can add the final segment within the US. That's totally fine. The only problem with that is that it's going to cost you more mileage. Because again, the around the world is based off mileage flown. So your actual mileage that is flown. And so you might bump yourself from the 105,000 to the 125,000 mark just with that one flight. Now, for some people, that will make sense to them. Maybe the flight from, you land in LAX and the flight to Virginia Beach is, $2,000. Well, an extra 25,000 points now makes sense. But usually you can find a better deal than that. So most people will just end on the West Coast in this example and fly themselves back to the East Coast.
Got it. Okay, perfect. That makes sense. So regions, I can either go east to west or west to east, like you said at the beginning. Have to hit all three. I can hit multiple stops in all three. So I think that was a really cool and a good overview of the basics of it. But I think it'd be really cool to hear a real life example of how to do it. And I know, Devin, you did it for your honeymoon, and so I would love to hear. I'd love to hear the story. All right, they're like just yeah. I'm gonna let you just run with it. How did you do it?
Perfect.
And how long was the honeymoon? How'd you do it? The points. I want to know all the things. All the things. Tell
People
me.
are going to be so confused and they're going to ask how I got 7 weeks off from work, but we'll talk about it later. Apparently, it's going to be one of the questions.
Yes, that's going to have to be figured out.
But my honeymoon was 7 weeks. Now, granted, my honeymoon was delayed by 3 years. So I do think I deserved the full 7 weeks. But even if it weren't delayed, I still deserved the full 7 weeks. But all of that being said, I am of the mindset, because I'm on the West Coast, I actually prefer to start my trip on the East Coast because I want to end on the West Coast. I want to end close to home, because once you're done with the around the world, you are ready for your bed. And I stayed in very nice hotels and I was still very, very ready for my bed. So that's how I do it. But of course, it's not how it has to be done. And so we started in Atlanta. And so we flew from a red eye Atlanta to, San Diego to Atlanta. Then we spent one day in Atlanta, just because I'm a firm believer. I'm very risk tolerant, but not when it comes to the around the world. So I gave myself a full day in Atlanta just in case anything were to go wrong. I also went in December. So as you all know, there could be snowstorms, ice storms, whatever could happen. So I just prepared myself for anything. Luckily, nothing went wrong. And then the next day, so we stayed at a Hyatt in Atlanta. Then we flew Atlanta to Addis Ababa, and then Addis Ababa to Zanzibar, which was our first real stop. All of this is in business class, by the way. I should have mentioned that. We enjoyed our time in Tanzania. So we did, I think it was 5 days in Zanzibar, just to, get on the time zone and enjoy. Then we went on safari for 12 days between Tanzania, Uganda, which was gorilla trekking, and Kenya, which was also a safari. And that was just amazing. I could have done that on points. I chose not to. So I did pay cash for that portion of the trip. But then from Uganda, because that was our last stop in Africa, we then flew to Malaysia, spent some time in Malaysia, then made our way to Singapore, then Bali. We spent like 2 weeks in Bali, which was absolutely amazing. And after all the safaris and the African massages that we got, and by African massage, I mean being in a car and it's so bumpy that it's,
yeah, got it.
It's rough.
I like the clarification there. Yep.
We were just ready for like rest and relaxation. And then our final stop was Taiwan. And then we ended in LAX. So that was our full around the world. It was, if I'm remembering correctly, 7 flights on the around the world. We got to try Ethiopian Airlines, which I feel like people shit on them all the time. I thought it was fantastic. But then again, I'm very easy to please. As long as I have a bed, I'm pretty happy. And then we also did EVA, which was really cool because they give you pajamas, and that was just fun to get pajamas.
Nice little luxury feel, getting a nice silk pajamas in the air.
Exactly. I still have them too, and I don't keep anything from airplanes.
I was just going to say, she still wears them around the house.
Yeah.
Like...
I do.
Nice. Very nice.
And then we also got to fly Singapore, which was really cool because one thing I will say, if you're trying to do this on your own, I'm just going to let you know right now that getting long haul Singapore is next to impossible. Even if you're seeing it available on Air Canada, even if you know all the tips and tricks and all of that, it's not going to be available for booking on ANA. The best you can get is a medium haul flight. Or short haul. So, anyway, I got to try Singapore, which was really cool. And they were wonderful, but that was basically my around the world. It was 145,000 points per person for those 7 flights. And we ended up paying $117 each in taxes and fees. And I will put an asterisk on that. It really was 417, but my husband at the time was military, so we got all our credit cards for free. And our Chase Sapphire Reserve had the $300 credit. So we used that, and it was a real $300 returned to us since we don't pay for the credit card.
Hey, it's DeAndre here, and we're going to interrupt this episode real quick to tell you about 2 great opportunities for all of you. First, join our private Facebook community to connect with fellow points and miles enthusiasts, get exclusive tips and updates, as well as get your questions answered directly by me and others in the community. And if you're looking to level up your points and mile skills, we've partnered with Lux Travel Hacks to offer you 50% off their online course that will teach you all the basics you need to know to learn how to travel in business or first class, all for less than you'd pay for economy. Don't forget to use the code BOLDLYGO at checkout. You'll find all the details and links to both of these in the show notes. Now, let's get back to our episode. That's absolutely incredible. So 145,000 points to fly around the world for what was basically 6-7 weeks, 7 flights, all in business class. And if you had to guess roughly, what was one of the longest legs you took time-wise?
In one place, it was Bali. That was 2 weeks in Bali. But we were also in Africa for 3 weeks, but we went to 3 countries. So.
Got it. And as far as the flight goes itself, do you remember what the longest, was it Atlanta to Zanzibar? Was that the longest haul, or would it have been coming back across the Pacific?
I think it was actually Atlanta to Addis Ababa. I think that one was 14, and I think Taipei to LAX was 13. So it was like 1 hour difference.
Got it. But either way, I mean, you were in business class in a lie flat seat, had the opportunity to drink champagne if you wanted to, and you got the pajamas on EVA. So super cool experience. I'd love to hear some of the highlights. I mean, gorilla trekking sounds fun. I do know, because I've heard the stories. I know the gorilla trekking involved an experience that I think, if it's not too traumatizing to share at this point, would love for you to share, but would love to hear some of the highlights in these different places, because I think while we do all this and we could talk for hours on the strategy and the points and the miles and the luxury and yada yada yada, part of this is just the experience of seeing the world, right? And like living and really just reshaping the way that we do things. And that's part of the reason why the name of the podcast is Revolutionizing Your Journey, because we're just doing the journey different. So love to hear about some of the top-notch experiences. And Kelsi, I'm not forgetting you either, because I want to hear about some of your amazing redemption stories too.
Oh, I'm all good. All good. Let's get to the Devan's gorilla trekking.
I actually
Perfect.
don't know that Kelsi knows this story. Maybe she does, but I don't think she's heard my other podcasts. So when I'll give it was good and bad story first, and then I'll say some more like really positive things about our trip. And I do want to like preface this with, I loved gorilla trekking. I loved Uganda. Honestly, our entire experience in Africa was just beautiful. And I don't know that I really have the words for how amazing it was. But the experience that you were talking about was, I was gorilla trekking, and just so everybody understands how gorilla trekking works, you do pay a fee, a pretty hefty fee. Uganda is the cheaper country, which is why I chose it, because I'm a hacker. And it's $800 per person, and you get to be with the gorillas for 1 hour. What they fail to mention is that, and I guess it says it in the name, you are in the impenetrable forest. And the name sort of tells you that the gorillas don't want you. And the forest doesn't want you. But anyway, nonetheless, we had our person. They did tell me like bring certain things, long pants, long socks, because there were ginormous ants, and the thorns were everywhere. Like, it was crazy. The man has like a machete, and there are 8 gorilla families where we went. And there's only a certain amount of human beings allowed to be near them per day, because they're trying to keep the gorillas safe at the end of the day. So anyway, we get put with our group. We were told we were in the medium group. So there's easy, medium, hard. And I was like, okay, great. This shouldn't be a problem at all. I'm relatively fit. I got this. I work out plenty. It was the hardest experience of my life. It was muddy because December is wet season, rainy season. So it was so muddy. My shoes were not holding up, like the traction on them, there was none. To the point where we started downhill to find the gorillas, and you can go anywhere from like an hour to 8 hours before you even find the gorillas. And
because they're hiding in the jungle, and it's trekking to literally find gorillas.
Yeah, and they're free roaming. So they do their normal life, and we go and see their normal life. So whatever they're doing is where we go. And so anyway, going down the steepest hill of my life, I don't even really know that you can call it a hill. It was a cliff. And I hate going downhill. I'm fine going uphill. But anyway, we're going downhill, and I start slipping, and I'm basically just on my butt this whole time. And so I finally tell my husband, I'm like, I'm just going to crab crawl it down. Because everyone was going so fast. I had hiking poles. I thought I was ready. And so anyway, I finally get down there crab crawling to the bottom for an hour and a half. And before we find the gorillas, I'm near tears at this point, because I'm like, my body is shaking. I have thorns in my hands, like all over. They're just there. And I have scratches and scrapes all over me as well. Lots of bruises.
Just physically just over it, and we haven't even seen
yet. One gorilla. And so we finally make it to gorillas, and I'm on the floor crab crawling, and everyone's like, look at them, and I'm like, where are they? Like, I can't find the gorillas. They're in front of me. So I finally, people help me like stand up. So I stand up, and then they move me. And again, it's rainy season, so the grass is really high at this point. And so they moved me over to like a safer area that wasn't at such an incline, so that my shaking legs could like calm down for just a second. And all of a sudden I hear our guide say, you need to move. And he didn't know our names, so none of us knew who needed to move. And I definitely didn't think it was me, but it was me. And all of a sudden, the silverback gorilla, who was quite far from me, but very large, if you've never seen a silverback gorilla, he goes from like playing with his child to getting up and charging me.
Oh my gosh.
And it was the scariest moment of my life. I have no idea why this gorilla is charging me. I literally just sort of want to cry. And so anyway, I turn around and I run into my husband. Thank God I run into him, because had he not have caught me, I was going to run straight into another silverback gorilla, like straight into another silverback gorilla. Wow. So he caught me. I am just freaking out.
Kudos to him.
I know. And I did not understand why he had charged me. And finally, someone points over and they're like, you were next to its baby. And I was literally like, had I just put my hand down, I would have touched the baby, which made sense in hindsight. But and I would have charged me too if it were the other way around. But, you know, I didn't know that the baby was there. And that's why, that's why I got charged by a silverback gorilla. And he gave me the side eye for a hot minute. And then he finally like calmed down. And and we went back to doing like our thing and watching them just interact. The babies were so cute. Like they were playing, they were swinging from vines. Like it's a very Tarzan-esque. Um, and we had a really good time, but I will say my adrenaline was pumping so hard that I think I blacked out for like a good 30 minutes of the hour that I got. So yeah.
I was going to ask you how, after learning the literal definition of fight or flight, how did you manage to enjoy the rest of the time there without just being in full panic? I mean, that makes sense, but I imagine that's got to be it's a great story.
Yeah.
After the fact, but that's got to be absolutely unreal.
Yeah, it was. So I'm usually a freezer, so I was actually pretty proud of myself that I moved. But yeah, I will also say I was really proud that I didn't cry because I was very close. Like my adrenaline was just it was pumping so hard. I'm not sure I've had that much adrenaline in a very long time, or ever. And so, yeah, I think it just took like a second to finally like calm down, realize that the gorilla realized I wasn't trying to touch his baby or him or anyone. And then once we were good, the gorilla and we were good. So
you got to start fist pumping. You're like, all right, I see you. You see me. Like, we're all good. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I do appreciate you sharing that story. Kelsi, had you heard this one yet? Or is this your first time hearing the story?
Yeah. I've heard it a few times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I've heard it a couple times.
I do remember. I did tell you.
So our girlfriends, whenever one of us goes on a trip, we have this like really great thing that we do where we put all of our pictures up onto the TV and we just like drink wine and eat snacks and just like talk about our trip. So Devan shared this one during that.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. So that was Africa. And then I'd like to ask any other really cool redemptions or places that you stayed specifically, because I know you used points. You said specifically the safari, you didn't use points, to pay cash for that, but any like just super beautiful either Hyatts or Marriott's or whatever it may be that you used points for in any of the other destinations?
Yeah, so my initial plan had been to stay at solely Hyatt's just to, get to Globalist. And I am grateful I didn't do that, but at the same time, wish I had Globalist. But I would say that one of the coolest, two of the coolest redemptions we had were Hyatt's in Bali. One was the Alila Ubud, which is their pool was ranked as one of the most beautiful pools by Condé Nast. So that was pretty cool just to be able to experience that. We also got upgraded because I am Explorist at least. And we had our bathroom was actually outside with a tub, and it was like very secluded. So obviously no one was like looking in, but it was an outdoor rain shower and then a tub. And that was it was so nice and enjoyable. And I hope I'm not saying this incorrectly. I think I spent like 5,000 points, maybe 8,000 points a night on that one, because Bali's just so affordable. And then the other one that was like my all-time favorite, unfortunately, it is no longer bookable with Hyatt because it is a small luxury hotel. So I guess maybe now it's bookable with Hilton. Was up in northern Ubud. It was Bali Spa Village Tembok. And oh my gosh, this place was a bougie person's paradise. And I'm apparently that. And as the name says, it's a spa. So we were initially only going to stay 2 nights. I ended up extending a 3rd night. It was also a category 4 hotel. So I had 2 free night certificates. And so we used 2 of those, and then I paid 12,000 points for an additional night there just because we loved it so much. And it was an all-inclusive, but it also was an all-inclusive for massages. So we
Oh my
got,
goodness.
we got a welcome
Wow.
massage, head and neck massage, then a welcome like foot steam bath cleaning thing. I don't know how to explain it, but very Indonesian, very cool. It was on using the lava sand because that part of Bali has the black lava sand. So that was just really cool. And then we did get a free 50-minute massage, each of us, every single day that we were there, on top of
I'm sure you.
so many other things.
I'm sure you didn't take that, right? Because who needs a free massage every day? Like who? That's just. I'm sure you just. That was a waste of time for you.
Such a waste of time for sure. So yeah, I looked forward to that every single day. I was like, I don't need to leave ever. So yeah, that was probably like my favorite redemption was that one. And I am just so grateful I got to experience it before it's no longer a Hyatt.
That's super cool, actually. So we'll be in Bali in a couple months, and we are staying a long time actually at an Airbnb. Then we're bouncing around. When we first get there, first land there, I think we're staying at the same Alila because I use points for that as well. However, the whole pool thing's got me intrigued to now go and double check, because if not, I may have to make a change. So stay tuned to that. But super cool. I love everything that you just said, especially the massage part, because the one time I really spent a lot of time in Asia was in Thailand. And I mean, I was getting a massage a day because it was like $15 for a 90-minute massage in Thailand. So I'm super excited to look forward to some massages in Bali.
Get ready awesome. Because Indonesians go off the Australian dollar and our dollar is stronger than the Australian dollar. So they tell us it's $10 an hour, which means it's $7 American dollars an hour. It's life-changing in Bali. We had a massage every day.
Aren't you just like concerned for people who say that they don't like massages? I'm like, yes. Do you not like? Are you okay? Like,
yeah, I'm super excited. Well, Devin, I love those stories. That is awesome. I'm glad that you survived the gorilla trekking and really got to enjoy the around the world trip. Kelsi, have you had a chance to? I know you have all this knowledge on the around the world tickets. Have you had the chance to actually do an around the world trip yourself? And if not,
no.
What's one of the coolest redemptions or trips you've taken?
Yeah. So, I mean, great question. So it's funny, I haven't. I did book myself one last year and then I didn't go on it. Just kind of changed my mind. So
after spending all the time on the phone for the booking, I know that.
Yeah, I know, right? It just kind of like PTO and it didn't make sense. And I was like, do I want to do this alone? It just didn't make sense at the time. So that's fine. But my favorite around the world that I did book last year was for a solo female traveler. And it was my favorite because I love solo female travelers. Like, I love their sense of adventure and their flexibility. And yeah, so she was my favorite booking that I did last year. And she was super flexible, but she did have a few things that she wanted to do. And she'll be going on it soon, like in the next few months. And she actually is repositioning to Mexico City, which is where we grew up. So I really liked her flexibility there. She was like, Japan is a must. And we were able to find a flight to Japan, but only out of Mexico City. So she's spending a few days there, going to Mexico City, and she's just got like an awesome trip planned. And I'm just excited that I got to be a part of it. You know, she's going from Japan down to Australia. Then she's going to hang out in Bali for a little bit because everybody needs the free massages all day, every day. And then she routes back through Istanbul and back down to Mexico. So that was my favorite one that I booked last year because normally we book it for couples, which is always so fun. Like, I love that, like a honeymoon trip. But I love to see a solo female traveler. And then in terms of your second question, favorite redemptions, I mean, I'm really easy. Like, I like them all. But I thought for like the purpose of this conversation, since we are talking about ANA, I think another one that is really like underutilized is booking ANA business and first class with Virgin Atlantic points. And the reason I think that it's difficult to do, me myself, I've only done it once. and I transferred the points, booked it because that's just what you do. You just book it and like worry about it later. And then I didn't take it. So I have a bunch of like stranded Virgin Atlantic points. But the reason it's so good is because it is such a good redemption. And you can get first class with it, which is great. And there's always a transfer promo to Virgin Atlantic. So I feel like it's worth mentioning since we're talking about ANA anyway. And like, this is another way that you can fly ANA without necessarily having ANA points or Amex points, right? Anything transfers to Virgin. So,
and not having to book round trip, because if you book with ANA, you have to book a round trip, or the around the world, which is really frustrating for a lot of people. So this is one of those like hacks that doesn't require you to book through ANA, but still get to fly ANA for a really like, I think, Kels, correct me if I'm wrong. No, I think on Virgin, it's like 45,000 points for business class to Japan or something with no promo.
Yeah, so it would be 90 round trip, 45 each way. And then first, I think they bumped up to 145 round trip. Wow. So whatever that is, like 72.5, which is just like such a good deal. So
that's awesome. So I've actually flown ANA once, actually, when I went to Thailand, and that was in 2019, I think it was. And so I flew economy back then because I was like, I'm using my points for economy. Then, of course, once you fly once in business class, you just can't go back for long haul. But I actually flew that booking through United. So I had a United flight long haul from, I think it was Chicago to Tokyo, maybe. And then from there ended up being, or no, maybe it was ANA from Chicago to Tokyo, and then from Tokyo to Bangkok ended up being ANA again. And so even in economy, I remember the food being amazing. It was like a 5-course meal in economy. So I'm excited to get back to ANA for their business class experience.
Wait, that's how I feel about Singapore and Emirates. Like, I've flown their economy and their business class, but I've flown their economy, and I'm like, people will be like, oh, is their service nice? I'm like, honestly, their economy is like business class. Like, yeah.
Fun fact I will say is that while I have booked a million ANA around the world, I have never flown ANA even economy.
Wow, because on your around the world flight, you said it was Singapore Air. It wasn't ANA, right?
Yeah, because like theoretically, right, it's in the Star Alliance, so you don't have to fly ANA.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Devin, I mean, I'm sure you're going to get on. I mean, you're the expert. I mean, they should put you on like one of their new planes coming out just so you can experience it, since you are the Point Sisters, which is a perfect segue to what I want to chat about right before, get into wrapping up here. So you guys have your booking service. And I am all for using this. I feel like I'm a pretty smart guy, but you know what? I love that there's experts that know things way more than I do, and I would love to leverage your time and knowledge for when we do this, because Tara and I, absolutely, we're going to be doing an around the world trip at some point. Not this year. We have enough trips. We have a wedding next year, so maybe not next year, but I'm thinking 2026 is the year. So just so you know, we'll be reaching out. But tell us about your booking service. How does it work? What's the cost? Like how does someone reach out to you and say, hey, I want to go around the world, and what should they expect?
Sure. We route a lot of people to our website, which is, I mean, you can find us on Instagram, but we'll still, if you DM us, we'll still route you to our website, which is pointsisters.com. And there's an award booking tab. So it kind of walks you through our around the world booking or just our regular award bookings. And the cost is, we charge $500 per person, and we do charge $100 search fee per person in order to do the search, because once we do the search, we're calling to book. We're not making tons of changes for people that, maybe like don't want to pull the trigger or want something like really perfect or want to make changes. We incur another search fee because it takes a lot of time, a lot of attention, a lot of detail to get that right. And then essentially once that deposit is paid, we'll hop on a phone call, and it'll be really similar to this. We'll talk about, like, what's your vision? Because obviously we want to get people what they want. It's not always possible. So we talk about their vision. We kind of map it out on paper, and then we tell them what's reasonable, what's feasible, what we think maybe we should change, or some considerations to make. And then once it's time to book, you know, some people are last minute, some people are a year out. So we wait for the day that it's like, okay, it's time to search. We'll do the search and then make the phone call, typically the same day. And that's how it goes.
Awesome. And so with the way your process works, you just said some people are last minute, some people are farther out. So how much lead time should you assume to plan for, right? I mean, I know one thing is the fact that there's award booking is usually only a year out in general, but I mean, what's the soonest? I mean, could someone say, hey, I just have 3 weeks off right now, I want to go now? Is that
Honestly,
possible,
those are
assuming
our
you can find
favorite.
something?
Those are our favorite by far. There's a lot, like really cool routings will pop up at that time. Lately, we've been getting a ton of Japan and Oceania requests, and Asia to North America, or North America to Asia, Oceania. Like those are the hardest routings to find. And so they typically open up last minute, like even a year ahead of time or 11 months ahead of time. You might not find very much. Whereas last minute, a month before, 8 days before, like if you're ready to go in 6 days, I can get you on an around the world.
Yeah.
So those are the things. And one thing that I will say, and I'm sorry, Kelsi may have said it and I might just be repeating it, but we do require our clients to send the points before we will even start the search.
Oh yeah, I didn't say that.
Because what people don't realize about the around the world is once we find an itinerary, as Kelsi said, like we get on the phone with A&A right away. We get on that 2-3 hour hold, because it has happened to me. Actually, when I was on the phone for 3 hours waiting for A&A to pick up my own I'm going on another around the world in a month.
Nice.
And all my flights were gone by the time that I called. So if we have to wait 2 days for your American Express points to transfer to A&A, it will have ruined our entire search would be gone at that point. So
Got it. So uh, with the sake of like last minute booking then, because I mean, I think of myself as a planner, and I feel like I don't book super last minute, but most of the award trips that we take are probably a couple months out. I never do the whole 11 months. I have no idea what I'm doing 11 months from now.
Yeah.
But how do you navigate, right? So if you're traveling a month from now, have you already booked your hotels, and so you just need to get the itinerary for the flights for this around the world? Or are you basically going to get the itinerary for the flights and then from there figure out where you're going to stay, and that's going to be shorter notice than probably most people would do?
The latter.
Yeah. So a lot of people you're not going to know. I would say the sweet spot for the around the world is either going to be 11 months from the last day of your last flight on the around the world. So to explain that, let's pretend you want to leave May 2025, but you want to come back June 2025. We cannot start looking for flights until July 2024. So that's if you're doing it 11 months out, because the schedule's not open and you have to book it all at one time. You can't
Makes sense.
call into A&A, hold one flight. No, you have to book it all at one time. So that being said, it's either going to be 11 months from the last day of your travels or like 3 months. Like I booked mine 3 months before travel and I was able to find a really cool redemption. But that like 9 to 6 month range, that's the worst. It's almost nearly impossible to put something together. I mean, we've done it, but it's a lot harder.
Also, like we said, we really talk about consideration. So if somebody's like, I must be on a flight to Japan or I must be on a flight to Oceania, we say, hey, they only open up one seat on that segment. Are you willing to travel on Tuesday and your husband on Wednesday? Because that will open up a lot of opportunities. So we really try to be creative with the bookings, but those are some things that we do. Some tips and tricks.
Very cool. Well, you've already named a lot of different parts to this, right? So this is a complete puzzle, and that's why I said I am absolutely hiring you ladies to do this for myself when the time comes. However, if someone was going to try to do this themselves, what would you tell that person, and what are some of the common mistakes that you found? And you've already mentioned, right, you already have to make sure your points are ready, the time frame. Anything else that would come to mind that you would say, hey, try to avoid these mistakes, or that you find when you hear of people that have tried to do this, they're like this happened or that happened, that you have seen with your expertise?
Yeah, and I think we've already mentioned it a little bit, but don't overdo it. Like a lot of our exploratory calls when someone first gets, books with us for the ANA around the world, a lot of that call is us trying to bring people back down to reality. Um,
Sounds like my life as a financial advisor.
Yeah.
yeah, like definitely not trying to be rude, but it's very much like I have literally been on a phone call where someone has 12 days and they want to go to 6 countries. And I'm like, I'm not going to say you can't do it. It's, I guess, possible. But you were literally going to be on a plane almost every single day. You're going to be exhausted. You are going to go back and forth to the airport and pay money to go back and forth to the airport. Like at that point, you might as well just live at the airport, each airport you go to. So I would say my recommendation, because it's the biggest mistake I see, is, and I even sort of did it with my honeymoon, like with 7 weeks, I probably could have taken away, like I would have taken away Taiwan, if I'm being completely honest, maybe even Malaysia. And it's not because I didn't like those countries, it's just I didn't give myself enough time in them. Um, and so it's like less is more sometimes. With it being so cheap, honestly, like my next around the world is 105,000 points. That's how much it was for my flights. We're going to 3 countries. That's it. And we're keeping it simple. And I'm really excited for it. Now, granted, this time I only have 4 weeks, so it's a little less. But only, I shouldn't say only.
I
But
was gonna say only is a very, very relative statement.
but it's like managing those expectations. You can get 105,000 points, 115, 125,000 points once or twice a year easily with American Express. So you can, the round the world doesn't have to be a once in a lifetime. You can do many
Once a
of them.
year.
Yeah, you can do once a year, twice a year if you're me. Like that's my recommendation, and probably like the biggest mistake I see people make is just wanting to go everywhere in one day.
Very cool. Very cool. So
One
speaking
day.
of
So dramatic.
the only 4 weeks. So how have you managed to get 4 weeks PTO after getting 7 weeks PTO for your honeymoon? Which I'm not sure how long ago was your honeymoon, but how is 4 weeks your entire vacation for the year? So how have you ladies been able to fit travel into a busy work schedule, right? Because Kelsi, the beginning of this show, you were like, "Hey, I'm a normal person." So how have you been able to fit travel into your busy professional lives?
Kelsi, you can
Yeah,
answer
so
first.
Devin's a cheater because she works for a university and they have just absurd amounts of PTO. What Devin has
Not that true. Not that true.
no, it's so true. She's like, oh, I only have 37 sick days a year. I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't even get like, okay, but anyway, as not to go on a tangent, very, very clear transparency. I work for a regular American corporation. I get 15 PTO days. I work a hybrid schedule, so I am able to work remotely. And then I get 5 sick days. And then we have 7 holidays at my company. So the way that I do it, I just either will flex my schedule. I'll work remotely a couple days while I travel. Like I was just recently in India for about a month. I was there for 3.5 weeks and I did end up having to work remotely like 4 of those days. Other than that, I worked a couple holidays, used them as floaters. I think I got to use MLK Day or whatever holidays kind of early in the year. And that's how I do it. I also have, a flexible boss who knows that this is important to me, knows that I can do a lot of my work remotely and knows that I get stuff done. So there's like a lot of trust there. I've been with the company for a while. That's how I do it. So I
Kelsi
probably
is also usually out of PTO by January of the beginning of the year.
it's true, which is a lot of the time. Like I have a trip to Japan planned. I need to cancel that. Like, let's be real. Like, and this is my problem. I book and cancel all the time. But I think the act of booking is like so important in points and miles so that you have the experience.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I have 20 days off a year. 27 if you count like our pathetic little holidays. And I just use holidays, flex my schedule, work remotely. I don't think I've taken a vacation in years where I actually did not work one day. Like I always kind of log on for a day or two.
Question. So
Yeah.
when you do work, like when you were in India, did you do like okay, I'm going to start at 9 p.m. at
No.
night and work till 1 in the morning or anything?
No, and that's kind of the nice thing. Like I've always worked for companies like this. I work in beverage manufacturing, so we run 24/7. So if I'm working in India, I think I worked normal hours, like maybe 6 a.m. I'm up early, like 6 a.m., 7 a.m. to like 2 or something. That's just like 2 a.m. here, and we have a full team at my work. So it's no big deal. Also a lot of my work is like not always like client based or like with people, so I can just do my work on my own and not necessarily have to like check in with anyone. So
Perfect. That makes sense.
yeah.
And then for me, just to set the record straight, I only get 5 sick days a year that I don't utilize. So I do currently have like 15, but that's just to set the record straight. As Kelsi mentioned, I do work in higher ed, so our schedule is very nice. I also work for a university that is very flexible. I currently don't have a boss right now, but my boss did approve my 7 weeks. I'll probably never do 7 weeks again just because I do manage a team and they understood why I was leaving for such a long period of time because it was just this past January, actually. December and January. And so I get 24 days off a year, not including my sick time. Plus I think like 10 holidays plus 2 weeks in December. We're completely closed at the end of December and early January. Plus I work a condensed schedule. So I get every other Friday off. So once I put all of that together, it really adds up quickly on like how I can finagle my time off. Which is really nice. And again, at my office, my number one thing, like with the people I work with my team, I am very big on them taking vacations. Like, if anything, I'm the one championing them to take vacation. I don't want them to burn out. We're in recruitment. Recruitment is just known to be a very high burnout field. And none of them are getting paid enough, and it's not brain surgery. So at the end of the day, I want them to take their time off. I want them to enjoy time with their family, with their partners, significant others, with their children if they have them. That's just something that's really important to me. And I think, as a boss, I think it's important to emulate that and show them that you too are doing it so that they feel comfortable doing it themselves. Because I've worked for bosses before who would penalize me for taking time off, for needing the mental health reset. And I hated that. So I will never be that type of boss. And I think my team really appreciates that because they know they can ask me for time off and I'm going to approve it 99.999% of the time. So,
But like, just to set the record straight, you easily have 57 days off a year. Like, just so that we're clear. Like,
I don't hear a hint of sisterly jealousy at all. I don't pick up on a touch of that.
Yes, exactly. I have 100 days off a year, and it's great.
I mean, that's what I heard. That is what I heard.
Got it. Well, ladies, this has been awesome. Devan, for what you just said there. That's actually a really cool point because I 100% agree with you, right? So, in my day job, like running a financial planning firm, what we actually did, because I do travel a lot here, and I do travel a lot all around the world. We take lots of time off throughout the year. We pack a lot of our my client meetings while we're here. So that's why, emulating what you said about believing that the people that work with you, right, your team, they should be able to do the same. So we moved to an unlimited PTO model, right? So that like those that help me support our clients, they can be able to do some amazing things and travel and spend time with family for that exact same reason. So I love that you said that. That's a really great point to bring up. Kelsi, Devan, this has been amazing. This has been one of our longer shows, but this has just been absolute gold. Like I absolutely love this. Both have been great to chat with. So question on what's the best way for the listeners to connect with you all? I know that you mentioned there's the booking service and there's the website and Instagram. Like what would be your preference on how they should connect with you?
Point Sisters on Instagram. That's where we live and breathe. We're terrible at everything else. We're just bad social media millennials, and like Instagram is it. And you will never know who messages you back. It's either Devan or it's me. And yeah, that's the best place to connect with us.
Perfect. Well, appreciate the time. A couple last questions here for you. I always like asking this, right? So you're in the points and miles space. You're booking award travel all around the world for people. I know that you speak at conferences on points and miles. So again, really super appreciate you guys taking the time out to be on the show. Who else should we have on this show that you think would be a value for our listeners to hear and have some really cool stories to tell?
Ryan is great.
Oh my God, I love Ryan.
What's his handle? It's
Points and Profit. It's Ryan Hornblend.
Yeah.
I don't know his.
I think it's Points and Profits or something like that.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
I love Allison over at Lucky Tic Tac.
Oh my gosh, rebranded. I love Allison. Yeah.
She may have rebranded, but she's like a wizard. Like she'll be like, you tell her where you want to go, and she's like, it's like some like weird Excel stuff. She'll be like, oh, that's 7,000 miles on Zurich Airways, and you can book this way. And we're like, do you have like seats.aero open? Like
it's like, an open tab in her brain.
Yeah, like it's kind of crazy. So so many good people. But yeah, Ryan for sure, and then Allison over at Lucky Tic Tac.
Awesome. We'll reach out, let them know that you guys gave them a shout out and get them on a future episode. Before we wrap up, ladies, any final thoughts from you? I mean, this has all been gold. I mean, this is all next level quality information. Any final thoughts from either of you before we wrap up here?
The most important question is, how much PTO do you? Oh, you're unlimited.
Yeah. So that's a great question. So I'm the CEO and founder.
Yeah,
that's okay. Great question. So I don't actually get asked a lot of questions myself, so I appreciate the question. Yeah. So as the founder and CEO of the planning firm, so I technically have unlimited myself because I am the boss. Like I own the firm. So I give my team a limited PTO. I do average probably. I take off between 3 and 4 months out of the entire year, collectively. So
you understand my life then.
So Devan too, but she's not the CEO.
Yeah. So I understand their life. So, yep. But what I basically do is I work to, I try. So let's say I'm home for 2 weeks before we have another trip for a week or so. Cause we go somewhere once a month. Not all the time is it going to be like to a Bali, but it could be a Mexico or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So I'll cram in the equivalent of 4 weeks worth of meetings with clients and everything else I have to do in a 2.5 week period per se. So, okay. I have a high volume practice, and so we work. It's the work hard, play hard, right? So yeah. we work, we grind. And
you're hustling and then relaxing.
Exactly. So then when I go away, I don't work. Now, for me, not working is not seeing clients. I still, respond to emails and forward stuff to my team to handle, like, from my phone or laptop, whatever it be, or while I'm on a flight. But yeah, that's how I do it.
And what about your wife, though? Because, does she work? Sorry, that was assumptive. Yeah.
No, that's a great question. Again, I don't get asked questions often on my own show, so I love this.
Yeah.
So she is a career transitioning consultant. And so she works 100% remote.
Okay.
And so she gets the chance to set her own schedule, so she can cram in, 2 or 10 client meetings in a day, because she works with people that are transitioning, that had been laid off from their job or downsized,
Sure.
whatever, be to help them find the next role. And then we end up transitioning that into the ability for us to be very flexible with our schedules. So we basically we both of us can make our own schedules, essentially.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Devin, any last thoughts or questions that you had yourself?
No, I was just going to say thank you so much. And I think just ending it with, I know the ANA sounds like a really complex booking, and I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy, but it's definitely doable. So give yourself a shot at doing it. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. You can go around the world many times if you want.
Around the world many times. I love that. This is a great opportunity. Hey, build up those Amex points, and then reach out to Devin and Kelsi so they can book an around the world ticket for you. Find them at at Point Sisters on Instagram. And for the listeners out there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Kelsi, Devin, thank you for being on the show today. I know this was quality material, quality information. You guys are an absolute riot. And I know I will be meeting you all in person at the Travel More conference at the end of this year. So I'm excited, and we're going to have a great time.
Yeah, can't wait. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Absolutely. Thank you. You guys take care.